I'm 19 now, and for most of my life, my family felt normal. Boring, even. My parents were married for 22 years, we lived in a modest house in the suburbs, and we had our routine, family dinners every Sunday, movie nights on Fridays, the usual stuff. My brother, Josh, is 2 years older than me and has always been the golden child. Football star, funny, effortlessly charismatic. I was the quiet one, the one who read at the dinner table and hated loud parties. We were opposites, but we got along. Everything started to unravel last winter. My mom invited Josh's best friend, Caleb, over for one of our Sunday dinners. He'd been coming around since middle school, so it didn't feel weird at first. He was practically family. But that night felt off. Caleb showed up wearing a button-down shirt instead of his usual hoodie and brought a bottle of wine, for my mom. My dad doesn't even drink wine. I remember watching her open the bottle, giggling, like a teenager on a date. I thought I was imagining it, but then Josh leaned over and muttered, "What the hell is going on?" That's when I knew I wasn't the only one who noticed. My dad, bless him, seemed totally clueless. He was bragging about a new grill he'd bought and trying to talk to Caleb about football like always. But Caleb's eyes never left my mom. He complimented her lasagna like it was gourmet cuisine. She laughed at every word that came out of his mouth, even the dumb ones. I barely touched my food. That night, after Caleb left, Josh cornered me in the hallway and asked if I'd noticed anything strange. I told him yes. Then he said something I didn't expect, "I think Mom's having an affair." At first, I thought he was joking. But he wasn't smiling. After Josh said it out loud, I couldn't unhear it. The idea of my mom having an affair, let alone with my brother's best friend, felt too insane to be true. She wasn't that kind of mom. She packed our lunches into our 20s. She color-coded the pantry. She cried at car commercials. This wasn't her. But the next few days were different. She was always on her phone, smiling at it, typing quickly, flipping it face down whenever someone walked into the room. I started paying attention to her patterns. She'd disappear into the laundry room for calls. She put on makeup before going to the grocery store. Once, I walked into the kitchen while she was texting, and she jumped like I'd caught her stealing. And still, I tried to convince myself I was wrong. Because the alternative? It meant my family was built on a lie. Josh started digging. He didn't tell me how at first, but I assumed he went through Caleb's social media or messages. He suddenly got really quiet around me, like he was holding something back. Then one night, he stormed into my room with his phone and tossed it onto my bed. There were screenshots. Texts between Caleb and someone saved as L. My mom's name is Lauren. The messages were disgusting. Flirty at first. Then way worse. Explicit. And definitely not just from a fling, they were talking like they'd been seeing each other for weeks, even months. One message made my stomach drop. "I wish I could wake up next to you instead of him." Josh looked wrecked. I don't think I'd ever seen him cry before, but his eyes were red. He said he'd found the messages after noticing Caleb had left his phone open on the bench during a workout. He just picked it up to hand it over, and saw one notification. He didn't confront Caleb. Not yet. He wanted to talk to Mom first. But before he could, things got worse. Josh didn't even wait a full day before he told my mom he knew. He cornered her in the living room while Dad was out getting groceries, and I stayed upstairs, listening through the vents like some guilty spy. I couldn't hear every word, but I didn't have to. His voice was low, furious. Hers was high-pitched, shaky. Then, suddenly, silence. I crept halfway down the stairs. My mom was standing with her arms crossed, her face pale but defiant. Josh was sitting, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like he couldn't even look at her anymore. I thought maybe it was over. That she'd admit the mistake, beg forgiveness, and maybe, somehow, we'd pretend this never happened. But instead, she said something I'll never forget. "Your father doesn't make me feel alive anymore." Like her boredom gave her the right to blow up our entire lives. Josh didn't yell. He just stood up, told her to tell Dad the truth, and walked out of the house. I followed him a few minutes later, found him smoking in his car, a habit I didn't even know he had. Neither of us spoke on the drive. We just drove around, trying to act like we didn't know what was unraveling back home. When we returned, Dad's car was in the driveway. The porch light was on. And inside, the yelling had already started. It wasn't Mom's voice. It was Dad. I'd never heard him raise his voice before. Hearing my dad shout was like hearing a stranger in our house. He's the kind of guy who used to kill spiders with a cup and a piece of paper. But that night, his voice cut through the walls like a blade. I froze by the front door, Josh right behind me, both of us listening. He was screaming about betrayal, about how he worked overtime for years so she could find herself, and this is what he got in return? That she didn't even have the guts to tell him herself, that he had to hear it from their son? Then I heard something I'll never forget, a crash. Glass breaking. A plate, maybe. Josh burst in first. My dad was standing near the dining room table, hand clenched around the edge. My mom was sitting on the couch, arms folded, calm. Too calm. Like this was some argument about overcooked chicken, not the implosion of a 22-year marriage. Then she turned to us and asked if we were done eavesdropping. Josh lost it. Told her she was selfish. That she didn't just cheat on Dad, she betrayed all of us. That she didn't even have the decency to be ashamed. She just sighed. Sighed. Like she was the victim of all this. Dad didn't say much after that. He just walked past us and into the garage. That night, he slept in his truck. The next morning, I woke up to a text from him. All it said was, staying at Uncle Ray's for a while. Don't let her spin it. I'm sorry. He left. She stayed. And within a week, Caleb was at our house again. Not sneaking in. Not hiding. Walking right through the front door like nothing had changed. When Caleb showed up with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, I thought I was dreaming. Like it was some twisted prank and any second, someone would yell gotcha. But no. He stepped inside like he belonged there, like he always had. I was sitting on the couch when I saw him. He didn't even flinch. Just gave me this awkward half nod and went straight into the guest room. My mom followed behind him like a puppy. I sat there in total silence, hoping maybe she'd say something, anything, to acknowledge how messed up this was. But nope. Nothing. The next day, she acted like life was normal. Made pancakes. Asked if I needed laundry done. And when I didn't answer, she just smiled and said, suit yourself. I think that was the first time I realized she wasn't sorry. Not at all. She wasn't dealing with guilt or heartbreak, she was glowing. Like she'd gotten what she wanted and was finally free. Caleb would come downstairs shirtless, eat breakfast at my family table, and call her babe while she laughed like some sitcom character. Meanwhile, my dad hadn't texted in days. Josh wasn't coming home either, he was crashing at his girlfriend's. I was stuck there. Living in the aftermath. And that's when the worst part happened. I overheard my mom on the phone with someone, I think her sister, and she said, it's been a long time coming. Honestly, I haven't loved their father in years. Caleb understands me in a way he never could. The kids will get over it. She said the kids will get over it. Like this was a scraped knee. Like our family wasn't being ripped in half. Josh came home the next day. He didn't say a word to Mom. Walked right past Caleb like he wasn't even there and sat at the kitchen table waiting for me. When I joined him, he slid a folded piece of paper across the table. It was a group text screenshot from Mom. She'd messaged me, Josh, and Dad. Said she wanted to have a family talk that night. That we needed to clear the air and start fresh. She even had the nerve to end it with a smiley face. Dad didn't reply. Josh didn't either. And I only typed one word before deleting it. I didn't want to give her anything. That night, she set the dining table like it was Thanksgiving. Fancy plates. Wine glasses. A candle. She even made that weird roasted chicken she always burnt. The one she used to save for birthdays. Caleb sat at the head of the table, like he was king now. Josh and I stood in the hallway, watching it all like a horror movie playing in our own house. She called us down. Said, let's just be civil. Please. For once. Josh didn't move. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I walked into the dining room, picked up one of the plates she'd set out, and dropped it. Just let it fall. It shattered into a dozen pieces on the floor. No one spoke. Then I said, this isn't a family anymore. And I walked out. Josh followed. We spent the night at a friend's place, both of us silent the whole time. But when we got there, Josh said something that stuck with me. She killed the version of Mom we loved. And she expects us to play pretend with this one. And the truth was, I didn't recognize her anymore. 2 days passed with no word from Dad. Josh tried texting him. Nothing. I even called, straight to voicemail. At first, I thought maybe he just needed space. But then I started to worry. He wasn't the kind of dad to go radio silent, not with us. Not after everything. Then, out of nowhere, he showed up. I was back at the house, grabbing a few things, when I heard his old truck in the driveway. My heart jumped. I ran outside, and there he was. Same old flannel, beard a little longer, looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. But his eyes were sharp, focused. He didn't say hi. He just asked, is she home? I nodded. Caleb's car was there too. Dad didn't even flinch. Walked right past me and into the house. I stayed outside, but I could hear it. His voice was calm, way too calm. Like he'd practiced every word. He told her he'd spoken to a lawyer. That he was filing for divorce. That she could keep the house, because he didn't want anything tied to her anymore. But he wouldn't disappear quietly. He was going after full custody of everything that mattered. Not the furniture. Not the property. The history. He had photos, emails, even the date-stamped messages between her and Caleb. Enough to prove she started the affair long before she admitted it. And then, he dropped the bomb. He was telling everyone. Their friends. The neighbors. The family. He wasn't going to let her rewrite the story with phrases like "we grew apart" or "it just happened." He was going to burn the fake version before it started. She tried to fight back. Said he was being cruel. Said Caleb made her feel alive. Said the kids would come around eventually. And my dad? He laughed. Told her, "You're half right." Then he walked out. Didn't even look at Caleb. After Dad's visit, the house changed. I wasn't staying there anymore, but I dropped by once to grab a few things I left behind. And the energy? Cold, stale. Like something had died in the walls. Mom didn't look like herself, makeup smeared, eyes puffy, a glass of wine in her hand before noon. Caleb wasn't around. That night, Josh texted me, "Check Caleb's Instagram." I opened it, half expecting vacation selfies or gym pics, but no. He'd gone on a full-blown rant in his story. A bunch of white text on black screens. He didn't say names, but it was clear. He talked about being used, about women who manipulate men into blowing up their lives, about falling for someone who was only looking for an escape. He even mentioned a son who turned on him, which was laughable, since Josh had been his best friend. Josh replied to the story with a single word, "coward." That's when Caleb messaged him directly. Paragraphs. He said he never meant for any of this to happen, that it started emotional and just got out of hand. He begged Josh not to hate him. Told him he still thought of him like a brother. Josh didn't respond. Caleb deleted his stories the next morning. But the damage was done. Mutual friends saw them. Screenshots were circulating. And now everyone knew something had gone down, but not everyone had the full story. That didn't stop Caleb's spiral. He unfollowed Mom. Then she unfollowed him. 2 days later, I found out he'd moved out. He didn't even say goodbye. After Caleb vanished, Mom went quiet. Too quiet. No texts, no family dinners, no guilt-tripped invitations to talk things out. At first, I thought maybe she'd finally accepted reality. That she'd finally realized she blew up our lives for someone who bolted the second things got uncomfortable. But then, 3 days later, I got a letter. Not a text. A handwritten letter, slid under my bedroom door while I was out. It was 6 pages long, front and back. It started with "I know you hate me." Then came the guilt-tripping. She said she'd always felt invisible in our family. That being a wife and mother had swallowed her whole. That with Caleb, she felt seen, desired, alive again. She talked about giving up her dreams to raise us, about feeling like a ghost in her own home. She said Dad hadn't touched her in years. I wanted to rip it up. But I kept reading. Because on page 5, she crossed a line. She wrote that she hoped I'd come stay with her now that the dust has settled. That maybe it could just be the two of us, like a fresh start. She said I was always the empathetic one, the one who understood her the most. And if Josh wanted to stay angry, that's his path, but she hoped I'd be better than that. I swear, I felt physically sick. She was trying to turn me against my brother. To make me the consolation prize now that Caleb was gone and Dad wanted nothing to do with her. Like she thought I'd step into the role of her emotional support, just because I was still legally under her roof. I left the letter on the table. Then I texted her one sentence, "I'm staying with Dad." She didn't reply. But I know she read it. I waited a full week before going back. Dad had settled into his new apartment by then. It was small, barely furnished, but peaceful. Quiet in the right kind of way. He didn't ask questions when I showed up with a duffel bag and no explanation. He just said, "Fridge is stocked. You can take the bedroom." That's the kind of man he is. But the story wasn't finished. Not for me. I needed to face her. Not for closure, not for drama, just so she'd know, once and for all, that I saw through her. That I wasn't going to be part of her damage control. I went back to the house on a Sunday afternoon. She answered the door like she'd been waiting. Hair done, soft sweater, no makeup but just enough vulnerability in her expression to look fragile. I didn't sit. Didn't take off my shoes. I told her straight up, "This isn't about Caleb. This is about you." She started crying before I even got past the first sentence. Said she'd lost everything and didn't deserve to lose her kids too. That I was all she had left. But I wasn't. I told her I loved the version of her who packed my lunch and kissed my forehead. I loved the mom who used to sing in the car and wake me up with pancakes on my birthday. But that version of her? She died the day she chose herself over the rest of us, without ever asking if we'd be okay picking up the pieces. She didn't say a word after that. Just stood there in the hallway, hands trembling, like she was waiting for me to take it back. To give her hope. I didn't. I walked out, closed the door behind me, and didn't look back. Now, months later, I live with Dad. Josh visits all the time. We're not a perfect family, not anymore, but we're still standing. And her? She's alone. Every once in a while, she tries again. A text on my birthday. A photo from when I was little. A memory she knows I won't ignore. I see them, but I don't answer. Because I did lose my mom. She just doesn't know it yet.